So, when you don't know how to do something, how to fix something, or how something works, what do? Ask a teacher? Ask your parents? Ask your friends? Ask someone you really know and trust? No! You go to the internet and ask some randos. But I'm not talking about creeps here, I hope. No, I mean the people of the internet! You know, those people who make how-to videos. Because chances are, if you're trying to figure out something, someone on the internet has already figured it out for you. Things like, how do I unsend a text? No. How do I do a winged eyeliner? How do I get rid of the zit by Friday night? How do I get out of gym class? How do I screen cap Snapchat without getting caught? They'll never know. But then there are things in life that don't have an easy fix, that don't have a simple solution, that don't have a how-to video. Things like what to do when you have problems with family, or when it seems like you have no control in your life, or what to do when someone has done something to you. I mean, clearly, they gotta go. The truth is, there's a lot of life that doesn't have a solution you can just find online. So how do you know what to do when you don't know what to do?
When I was in high school, my friends and I went to someplace called Olympic Broil a lot. All right, who's ever heard of the broil? Come on, y'all know. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Come on. The broil is the best, all right? We used to go to the broil like all the time. And we were helping a ministry down there. When I was like your age, we were helping a ministry down there. We were bussing in kids on Saturdays. But what we would do is on Friday, we'd go out pass out flyers in the neighborhood, like around Olympic Broil and like scattered out. And we would pass out flyers, inviting kids to this kids' church. And then we would end with going to Olympic Broil. And sometimes poor Ben didn't have any money. So you know how that feeling, you know when like other people are going somewhere like, you know, same thing happened when I would play soccer. Everyone would go out to eat afterward, and here's Ben like, I ain't got money for tacos. I don't care if they're like $1, you know? I don't care if we're going off the dollar menu at Wendy's. I don't have any money. And it was always great because somebody or sometimes the leader who was in charge of us would like pay for some of my food. And doesn't that just feel good when someone pays that for you? But then I'd be like, all right, man, no. Or like a friend every now and then would pay for me at Olympic Broil, and I'd be like, oh, man, I'll pay you back. And he's like, no, you don't have to pay me back. Like, I got you, bro. And I was like, no, for real, I'll pay you back, you know? And he was like, no, you don't have to. I'm just going to do this for you. And then sometimes I get to do that now for different people. Like, you know, here, I'll borrow some money. No, I'll pay you back. No. You know what? Don't worry about it. Don't worry. You don't have to pay me back. Doesn't it feel good when you don't have to pay somebody back? Right? Come on, just shake your head like you know. I need you to like respond to me because I've been in my office speaking to a phone for a long time, so I need some like response back to know that there's people in the room. Again, am I getting a little dramatic? Am I a little dramatic, Tyler? Am I being a little dramatic? He's like, I don't know. I don't know. But not asking to be paid back is kind of a heartwarming thing. It's heartwarming for the person who's giving you the money, right? And the person who's borrowing the money, it makes him, you know, hey, that feels good. But outside of paying money back to someone, the idea of payback always comes up when someone hurts us, doesn't it? When someone hurts us, the idea of payback immediately comes up. Have you ever had that thought? Like someone says something or does something to you, and then you like freeze or you got nothing, and then you walk away and you're like, oh, I got the best comeback now, you know, but then the moment's gone. If you say something now, you're just a loser. Like it just doesn't make any sense, right? But, you know, you freeze or someone says something, they hurt you, and you want to pay them back, right? I know this happens when sometimes we get embarrassed. When someone talks about us behind our back, what do we want? We want payback. Let's be real in here. When someone flirts with our boyfriend or girlfriend, what do we want? We want payback. Like, you're flirting with my girl, or like, you're flirting with my man, right? Now we want payback. Or when someone fails to text us back, or when someone fails to text us for an invite to like a party or something that's happening, right? And you find out about it later, and you're like, oh, I want payback, man. I'm going to throw my own party, and guess who ain't getting invited, right? Like, I know who's not coming to my party now, right, next time. What are some reasons that we want payback? Why don't you guys tell me? What are reasons why, if you were honest, what are reasons why we want payback? Yeah. Oh. yeah, feels unfair that something's not being done. You know, it was done to you and they're not getting anything back. What are some other reasons? What's something that might happen, you know, hypothetically that you would want payback for? What? Slug you in the mouth. Wow. Yeah, I would hope no one's just slugging you in the mouth, but but yes, if someone like hits you, you want payback. What happens in my house, this has been happening now more recently, is we have, she's already slinking down. So I'm going to have to start paying my kids when I bring them up for illustrations, I think. But like Gabe and Gianna are starting to pick on each other. One will just be like, you know, poking the other one, and then what do you want? You want payback, so then it becomes like, then they start like hitting each other, and then they start like pushing each other. Why does that happen? Because one person does something, and then you want payback, so you got, you got brothers in the room. When you have brothers in the room, that happens, right? That happens, right? Why does that happen? Because we want, everyone say payback. All right, in those moments when we've been hurt, we want payback. We want to hurt someone back. And maybe you don't go all scary movie on them. Maybe you don't do something really terrifying. But in one way or another, when we want them to feel the pain that we felt, right? Or we want them to feel the embarrassment that we felt. Or our first reaction is almost always to get even, isn't it? Or at least we want them to get something in return. I like what you said, Pri. At least, you know, we want them to get something in return, you know? And isn't it true that the closer you are to the person, the more we want payback? Like, let's be real, most of the time, you're not going to try to get payback for someone else's thing that someone's brother did to them, right? I mean, you're not trying to get payback to someone else's brother or sister, right? You're not trying to get payback because of someone else's best friend's, like, hurt, right? You're not trying to get payback because that's too far removed. The people who are closest to you and the people who know you best have the most powerful opportunity to hurt you. And that's the truth. So they're most likely to be on our payback list. The people closest to you are most likely, if you have a list of I'm going to get payback to, who watches the show Arrow? Who's ever watched that show? Okay, I like that show. At the beginning, like I don't know if it's the first 2 episodes. I'm not giving anything away, but he has a list that everybody's on, and he always looks at me. He's like, "You failed this city," right? You know, and then he's like, you know, doing something because he's giving payback. He's giving payback to those people. But for most of us, payback comes in 3 ways. All right, the first way is public payback. Like, this is when we want them. This is when we do to them what they did to us, and we want it to happen publicly. Like, if they got embarrassed, we hope, or if you were embarrassed, we hope that they, like, trip and fall in front of a crowd of people. Like, you know, face plant or something at a pep rally, and you'd be like, you know, because we want payback. You know, so the first way that we want payback is public payback, or we roast them, and then we're just like, oh, just kidding. You know, but you threw a little bit of not kidding in there just to roast them a little bit to give them payback. The second way that I think most of us want payback, if it's not public payback, it's passive payback. Some of you all, I know, are experts at the passive payback. It's the more subtle way. Like, we make comments that aren't obviously hurtful, but they could be interpreted that way, and you're hoping that the person interprets that, you know, that way just a little bit. Or it's that subtle comment on social media, that subtle comment back, or that subtle post that you repost, or something that you say, right? It's that subtle comment, that passive. Or we just ignore someone. Now we're just ghosting them, you know, because you're like, I'm just going to be passive now. Like, I want payback, but, you know, I'm just going to ignore them for a little while. Let them see how this feels. The third way that we want payback is imaginary payback. Now, I'm going to be honest here. Can I be honest as a pastor? I've known a lot of pastors in my day. I've talked to a lot of them. And we say a lot of things in our heads that we can't say publicly. You know, we say a lot of things in our heads that we're not allowed to post. Some people, they post them, and then they get in trouble. And then they get fired, and then they, you know, get all of that. I think pastors fall into this category. We have the imaginary payback. Because, you know, I might be an expert at this. Because imaginary payback happens when we have an argument in our mind. Like, someone is saying something or they're doing something, and you're having an argument with them in your mind, but you're like, I'm not going to argue with them in public. I'm going to smile and be like, you're awesome. But really in my head, I've got this imaginary payback coming. Or we have a better argument or a better comeback that's just that's just ready and willing. You're ready and willing to give this, but you really don't, because it's the imaginary. And then this isn't really the payback. It's not one of the 3 paybacks, but ultimately, I think the most satisfying thing is when we see that person fail, watching them fail. It's like when our ex broke up with us for someone else, we are just waiting until they get dumped, right? Or when our mom snaps at us and hurts our feelings, we're hoping that you're hoping your mom starts to feel bad about that, and maybe she's crying about that later, and she comes back and apologizes. So we're hoping that maybe that guy who made fun of you in the 3rd grade gets what he has coming later, and you hope that he fails at something. But in those moments, it feels like it's justice, right? Doesn't it feel like it's justice when you get payback? And that's the kind of situation that we find that Joseph finds himself in. So if you haven't joined us online, it's okay. You can go back to YouTube, and we've been posting those, right, AJ? We're going to start uploading those. We've been uploading our series. You can go back to some of the series we were doing online and check those out on our YouTube channel. But we've been going through, this is our 5th week of going through the life of Joseph, of what happened to him in his story. And we've journeyed through the life of Joseph, whose story is found in the book of Genesis, right? And this is a wild story. Joseph's story is found throughout like 7 chapters, and it's maybe more, I think. But it's a wild story. And early in this series, we talked about how Joseph knew his dad's, he knew that he was his dad's favorite. And we talked about how he had some dreams. He shared them with his brothers. He shared them with his dad, how everybody in his family was going to bow down to him, and they didn't really like it. They didn't take that too well, right? If your sibling comes up to you and is like, by the way, y'all are going to bow down to me someday. I've heard it from God. God gave me a dream, and you all are going to bow down to me and worship me. And it'd be like, yeah, bro, you lost your mind, okay? And then you probably punch them or whatever it is you do to give them payback, right? So instead of punching, we learned that in the story, Joseph's brothers decide to kill him, because that's an even trade. So Joseph's brothers decide to kill him, and then the oldest brother's like, let's not kill him. Let's throw him in a pit and then sell him into slavery. And so then Joseph becomes a slave, and he's a slave in Potiphar's house for a number of years, and he becomes the number 1 slave, the number 1 of the household. And so he learns how to run a household, and then he gets falsely accused. Poor guy, right? He gets falsely accused by Potiphar's wife, and so he gets thrown into jail, and so now he's a slave, and now he's in jail, but God rises him to the highest point in the jail, and he starts running the jail. Like the head of the jail is like, dude, you can do anything you want in here. I mean, you're still in jail, you're still a prisoner, but you can do anything you want, right? And then he interprets some dreams from a couple guys. One of them dies. The other one's the cupbearer to the Pharaoh. And this cupbearer gets released and forgets all about Joseph. And Joseph's like, hey, bro, remember me when you get out. And the cupbearer's like, I forgot about you. 2 years later, Joseph gets out. He interprets the dream for the Pharaoh. And now where we find ourselves in this story is that he's second in command, and his family is coming to Egypt. He's second in command to the Pharaoh, all right? He's like running the entire country of Egypt, or the entire empire. And here's Joseph. Their famine has hit the land, and Joseph's family is coming and needing food from Egypt. And they visit, and you'd have to check it out. And if you haven't read in Genesis, then you need to check this story out, right? But here's Joseph, and here he is. This is amazing. The plot twist is his family is coming to him. He recognizes who his family is, but they don't recognize him, right? This is crazy. They think he's dead. I mean, he's been in Egypt for a lot of years. He probably looks a lot different by now, and they don't even recognize him, but he recognizes all of his brothers. And the story gets really crazy, and it makes a lot of twists. But when his family arrives in Egypt, they didn't know it was Joseph. This family drama unfolds. And you don't want to miss this, but let's pick up the story in Genesis 45, verse 1, and it'll be on your screens. Genesis 45, verse 1, it says, all right, then Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everyone leave my presence." So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard of him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph." I mean, can you imagine the, bug eyes that they must have had? "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. So think about this. Joseph was a slave. He was thrown in prison, right? He's had a bunch of stuff happen to him, and he's standing in front of his brothers, and his brothers are freaking out, right? They can't even say anything. Wouldn't you be freaking out just a little bit? But this is great. Joseph had the best get what's coming to you moment in his life. It was standing in front of him. Everything had been set up for Joseph perfectly. The story was set up. He's second in command. His whole family, all of his brothers at least at this point, all his brothers have bowed down to him multiple times by now. And it's set. This is set up. Payback has dropped in Joseph's lap. He could have refused them food. He could have thrown them in the prison. He could have killed them if he wanted. Now here's my question. What would you have done? What would you do if you had that payback moment like Joseph with his brother standing in front of him? You have the perfect opportunity for payback. What is it that you do? What would you have done with all that power to hurt the person that hurt you the most? I want you to think about this for a second. What would you do with all the power to give payback to that person who hurts you the most? And by the way, this is what makes us as Jesus followers different than everybody else. Because we don't respond in the same ways that the world and that culture and that everybody says. We don't respond to that way, and that's what we're going to see as we continue on today. We don't respond in the same way of payback. We respond differently as Christ followers because of what Christ did for us. And here's the story continues. Joseph asked his brothers to walk over and stand close to him, right? I mean, here, it's set up. The story's set up. Here's the payback moment. Come over and stand close to me. And they're freaking out, right? Can you imagine the terror in his family? And Joseph said this, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now, there have been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years, there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me." Everyone say, "But God." All right, say it again. "But God." "But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save our lives by a great deliverance." Joseph could have responded in a lot of different ways. There's only one reason why he didn't respond with the payback that probably we all would have wanted or maybe have done. He didn't try to get payback because he had already let go of the idea of revenge. He had already let go because Joseph could look in the eyes, hear me in this, Joseph could look in the eyes of the ones that caused him the most grief, the most hurt, the most pain, and care about how they were feeling. I think we need a little bit more of this in our world today. Looking in the eyes of the people who hurt us the most, who cause us the most grief, and start understanding from them. Joseph said, "Do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here." Can you imagine feeling that way? He was, this is key, he was acknowledging their wrong and his hurt, but without creating any more hurt. This is the key. He was acknowledging their hurt. He was acknowledging what they did. He was acknowledging their feelings and his feelings, but he didn't throw more hurt into the picture. All we have right now in our world, if you look on the news, if you look on social media, if you look what people are yelling at everybody else, they're all just trying to throw more hurt at each other. That's what makes us as Christians different. Only a healed person can do this. Only someone who had forgiven can do this. Joseph chose forgiveness over payback. Everyone say forgiveness over payback. Thank you. Just to make sure you're here. And we see in the moment when he had the greatest opportunity for revenge, somewhere between being sold into slavery and being reunited with his brothers now, Joseph did the hard work of giving his hurt to God and allowing God to be the central in his healing. See, Joseph did the hard work. And let me tell you, it is hard work to not give payback, right? It is hard work to not give revenge. That's why Joseph was quick to acknowledge God in the area where his brothers had caused him the most pain. He didn't make what his brothers did okay. It didn't make it okay. It didn't make all of his hurt, all of that stuff okay. And it doesn't make what that person did to you or that hurt and pain, it doesn't make it okay. It didn't make Joseph's pain any less. Hear me in this. It doesn't make your pain any less when you refuse to give payback, when you forgive and you allow healing to come in. It doesn't make your pain, doesn't mean that your pain is always going to go away and it's going to be a magical moment. But forgiveness was not only for his brothers, it was for freedom from his pain too. Hear me in this. Forgiveness was not just for his brothers, it was for Joseph too. Joseph wanted to be free. Joseph needed to be free. And it was for his own freedom. And then Joseph went on to tell his brothers and his whole family to come move with him to Egypt, and he would take care of them. And that's what they did, and that's where the nation of Israel multiplied and became the nation of Israel. Is they multiplied and they started growing. But here's what he said in Genesis 45:15, and he kissed all his brothers and wept over him after his brothers talked with him. This is what happens. Joseph was able to have a conversation, was able to weep with his brothers, and this is where reconciliation happens. Okay, this may be the only thing better than payback, because we know payback feels good. But the only thing that can feel better, the only thing that is better than that is reconciliation. Reconciliation is where God does the impossible in a relationship and he brings peace. That's what reconciliation is. He brings peace where there had only been hurt before. So where you have had hurt and you want to give payback and you feel like there's hurt and there's pain, God does the impossible. Reconciliation happens when God comes in, does the impossible, and brings healing to your pain and to your hurt. And that's because of forgiveness. When it comes to other people hurting us, you know, we have a lot of opportunities to have payback, but there is something better. And here's what it is. When you don't know what to do, because sometimes we don't know what to do, pursue peace over payback. Pursue peace instead of payback. Gosh, what would our world look like? What would our communities look like? What would our schools look like if people just chose peace instead of payback, right? What if we chose that? Because here's the deal. It is a choice. See, in other words, you can fight to win. You can fight to be right. You can, fight to make a point. I do this a lot, and it doesn't get me anywhere, by the way, especially in marriage, because when you win, you still lose, okay? It's just what happens. I can fight to make a point, and I can try to make a point, and I can argue and make a point all I want. But you can fight to win, fight to make a point, fight to be right, or you can urge that fight for payback and pursue peace. But here's the deal. You can't do both. You can't do both. You can't fight to win and make a point and pursue peace. You have to choose one or the other. Joseph preserved his relationship with all his brothers because he chose peace. And he was only able to do that because he fought for forgiveness, because forgiveness is something you fight for, because peace is something you fight for. It's not like you wake up in the morning and you're like, I'm going to be peaceful. Everybody, y'all, I'm peaceful. It happened. Whoa, I've been enlightened. The bird comes down and you're singing heavenly songs and the clouds opened up and you're like, I have peace in my life, and you're floating around. It doesn't happen that way, right? You have to fight for peace. You have to fight for forgiveness. Here's the deal. Jesus fought to get to that cross. Jesus fought because he could have died a lot of different ways on the way to the cross. Jesus fought to the cross because without the cross, you and I don't have forgiveness. He fought to go die. Can you imagine that? Think about that for a second. He fought. He didn't die at the whipping post. They're whipping him a bunch of times, 39 times, with all of his skin is like falling apart. It's like ripping off of his body. He's bleeding out internally, and he fought to get to the cross. Why? Because we need forgiveness. Because you and I need forgiveness. That same fight that Jesus had as he's carrying the cross and he's walking through the city and out of the city and up to the hill. He could have died at any point along there, but he fought for forgiveness and he fought for healing for you and me. And you and I, sometimes we can't fight for a little forgiveness because of what somebody said to us. You know, somebody calls us a name, somebody calls us a word that we don't like, somebody says something and you're like, now it's over, right? We can why don't you put that down? Just put that, there you go. Now it's over. We can't even fight for forgiveness now because of what somebody did. And Jesus fought to get to that cross so that you and I could have forgiveness. So you have to fight for the relationship. Fight for the relationship. It's a fight. Joseph had the determination to do the work required and an understanding of God at work in his situation. Joseph wasn't magical. He didn't have something, some magical pill. No, he fought for it. And then, so when you don't know what to do, you pursue peace, right? And when you pursue peace, you fight for the relationship, and then you lay down your right for payback. You got to lay it down. You have to lay down your right. This is exactly what Jesus did. Jesus could have called down angels from heaven. Come on, it's God in the flesh. He could have called down angels from heaven and said, I'm done with y'all. Like, y'all are done. It's over. I'm done with this. He fought for that, but he laid down his right. He had the right. Jesus had every right for payback because he didn't do anything wrong, right? He was perfect. He was God. Jesus had to let go of that. He had to lay down his right for payback. So that's why you and I do the same thing. When we pursue peace, you let go of revenge. You say goodbye to the desire to get even. And I know it's easier said than done. But here's the benefit for you. You not only have peace for them, but you have peace with yourself. That's why the benefit, yes, the benefit is for them, but the benefit comes in the freedom for yourself when you pursue peace, when you lay down your right to get payback. And here's why this is complicated as we finish up. Because of what happened to you, because what happened to you isn't what happened to Joseph. I'm sure you have tons of stories of reasons why, you should have payback on somebody. I'm sure in the Bible, there's tons of stories. But maybe you've spent this whole time wondering, as I've been talking, you might have been, thinking about this. But do you always have to reconcile? I know I've asked that question. Do you always have to reconcile? Well, sometimes it's not your choice, and I understand that. Sometimes it's not my choice to reconcile because I don't have control over what happens in there between them. But maybe you've spent this whole time thinking, what about when it's toxic? Or what if you're the only one who did the hurting? Each of us have a unique and complicated situation. And figuring out what it looks like to pursue peace, it's not easy. But each of us have a different story. You all have a different story, right? What you want for payback is different than the person sitting next to you. But as you head out, I want you to think about, this is why small groups are so important, because we want you to talk about what this looks like for you with your real friends and your real family and your real life. We want you in small groups, we want you to talk about what these things look like. So when we do have small groups, the point of us breaking this down is so that in your real life, in your real family, right, you guys can have discussions and talk about these things, and you can look to leaders and people that have gone ahead of you. So I want you to think about that. You have the power to pursue peace. What do you need to decide? I want you to just go ahead, bow your heads, close your eyes. And you can just play some of that altar music. I just want them to think about this for a second. I want you to think about this. Each of us You know, we have the power to decide when it comes to pursuing peace. What do you need to decide? Yours is going to look different. Your story is going to look different. What do you need to decide right now? What do you need to decide? Like, not tomorrow, not like, all right, Pastor Ben, that was really good, but, you know, I'm still going to be mad and I'm looking for a way to give payback right now. I want you to think about, what do you need to decide to get freedom? What do you need to forgive? I think we all have something. We all have something that we need to forgive. I know I certainly do. I still have things that come up and I'm like, man, I thought I forgave them. I thought I've gotten over that. And man, I guess I haven't. Gosh, I'm still hurt. Gosh, what they did was so wrong. What offense do you need to bring to God? Because we've all been offended. Joseph had every reason. I mean, he was offended how many stinking times from his brothers. He brought it to God. He forgave them. Because God is bigger than we thought he was. He was able to get freedom. So what is it that you need to decide? What do you need to forgive? Or what offense do you need to bring to God? Because God can do incredible things in your story, more than you can even imagine yet. So when you don't know what to do, pursue peace. So I just want to put this maybe to the test a little bit. I want us to raise our hands. If you're someone in here and you can think of a situation that you need to decide to forgive, you need to let something go. You know, you need to decide, you need to forgive. You need to bring an offense to God. If there's something that you can think of right now and you're willing to pursue peace for that, just go ahead and raise your hand. If you're willing to pursue peace over something, peace over a hurt, peace over a situation instead of payback, raise your hand. Thank you. Hands all over the place. God, I pray for those that are raising their hands. God, that you would remind them of this, but more than that, Lord, in their time alone with you, God, that they would pursue peace, that they would pursue joy. God, that peace, that they would fight for that relationship, not fight for a payback, not fight to get even, but God, they would fight for the relationship and lay down that right to get even. Lay down that right for payback. Lord, empower them and encourage them as they go throughout their week, the rest of this week and over the weekend. Encourage them. God, we speak peace over these relationships. God, that we would be known right here at Real Life, God, people that don't pursue payback, but we pursue peace in our relationships. God, let us be known as people who pursue peace. In Jesus' name.